David, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
It is such a pleasure. This is the first time that we are sort of in the loop podcast, and we're doing it live. So this is hi from Ljubljana. David, I was very, very fortunate to be able to listen to you yesterday, and the one-liner that came out of listening to you is there is actually a process to becoming happy and to get to the A game. And I think there was about 100 people listening to you, and everybody sort of was able to feel one. It's a hard thing being happy and performing to the best you can, and as a consequence, the tricks and tips and the way how to get there. Everybody sort of listened carefully. Tell me, what is the secret of success to being able to work at your A game?
So I'm a big believer that habits determine everything in your life. If you they determine if you're super in shape or obese, if you are broke or rich, if you are happy or unhappy, it all boils down to the habits that you implement in your life. Basically eradicating bad habits and focusing on good habits to cultivate them. And habits is not only the stuff that you do in a day-to-day basis, also it's like mental habits, how you think about things and how you approach things. So it's mindset and habits that you do every day.
And what is the stuff? Because I'm we've had a lot of podcasts, and to be honest, if I listen to the gurus of management and of leadership and of corporate strategies, 10 years ago everybody was talking about process and strategy and planning, whereas today everybody I interviewed talked about mindset, about the power of mindset, the power of teams, the power of getting things done together. What is it with mindset these days? What is and I get it starts with you. How do you get your mindset right? Because there's so many things happening in the world, there's so many inputs you have, there's so many reason choices, disruptions, that you can very quickly get into what I call a not controlled mindset. So what is the trick to getting into the right mindset yourself?
So for me, it's important that I don't suffer from shiny object syndrome, because there's an abundance of choice that we can do. I think humans are not used to this. Back in the days, you most likely took the job that your father had, and you stayed in this profession, and there was not much choice in terms of what you eat because just whatever was in season or whatever you could get. Now you have supermarkets. Now you have, the new way of working. There's an abundance of things you can do with your life, and also in in business there's so many different marketing channels how you could do something, right? And if you dabble around in 10 different ones, if you don't have focus, then you will not have success, because you have to have a big impact on something. It's like the analogy: if you have a magnifying glass and get the sunshine through, you can burn a hole in this table, but if you move it around a little bit, you won't even warm up the surface. So I think it's important that you figure out what your personal mission is, or in business, what your business's mission is, and what the vision is, and what your core values are. And I still, you said the old business coaches always talked about process and planning. I'm still a huge fan of process and planning. And you also need a clear plan on, I love having my 3-year plan, my 1-year plan, and my 90-day plan. And these plans have to be in line with my mission and vision and my core values. And yeah, I think this focus gives you freedom by not being distracted and focusing on too many things.
And when you talk about sort of mindset focus, what are the things you do? Because we didn't introduce you well. You're a serial entrepreneur with exits in your life. Lived on the West Coast, out of Germany. So you love the sunshine. Married and now living in south of Turkey, a wonderful place in the world. Managing, I understand, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 companies today. So there's a lot of sunshine in your world. So what is the stuff you do to make sure that you are focused? And I get it. There's a plan. There's a value. But our listeners didn't listen to your presentation today. Can you give us just a brief overview of how sort of that looks, and how do you sort of put those things on paper or wherever so that you then stick to them?
Sure. So I have a set of habits that I always do every day and every week, and I track these habits. We have a habit tracker. You can check it out on it's a free habit tracker on app.managinghappiness.com. And so yeah, I have a few habits. Maybe going through my habits will help. My morning routine is I meditate in the morning. I do a little bit of yoga, and I think it's important to do this, like taking a shower for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to do it every day. You can't take a shower once and expect that you're going to be okay for eternity.
You can look at we have our editor here, Jerry. Our viewers cannot see him, but his big success from last year is his showers in the morning are with cold water. So he keeps telling me about, you need to try and have a habit. And he tells me that he started it, and now he's having the morning showers. So I get that habit story. I'm trying to do mine as well. Sorry for
No. Another really important habit is that I plan my day, and I make sure that when I plan my day, I focus on things, or I work on things that are on my 90-day plan. So I work on the urgent stuff and not only important stuff. It's like always a thing. If you're not diligent and focused, then urgent will always pull you away from important. You end up just putting out fires and not really making real progress. Another habit that I have is I eat the frog in the morning, which is a concept. You look at your task list and you circle the one that you really don't want to do, because most of the time that's the most important one that you have to do. And when you do this, then you get a lot of energy from this, because you knock the sucker out of the way, and he's like, "Yeah, okay,
I've done it.
Now and let's tackle the rest." Whereas if you're not doing this, then you have this frog in the back of your mind, and it's growing and growing and growing, and taking away mental resources. And I do my best not to procrastinate in any way, because I think procrastinating is being an asshole to your future self. And yeah, these are mental habits that.
Now, Tanya, my wife, yesterday listened to you, and she really liked the stuff, and she wrote her habits. One was no digital mess after 8 o'clock. I wrote no digital mess after 6 o'clock. So we have two habits we're going to try to introduce. But
you try.
I will. I will do. Yes, you are right. You're, and I think that's a very good point, because it's setting lower expectations that you should. And going to that, her question really was, how do you get there if you're not, if when you were young you didn't have that sort of discipline instilled in you? Meaning, there are people, and most, I do a lot of coaching, as I told you, and most of the people, even getting them to do into behavior of having weekly meetings with their staff, whatever the structure, was a hard thing, because most of the entrepreneurs don't even have meetings. They just keep on doing stuff and trying to sort of solve urgent matters instead of defining what is important. So is it something you from day one as a young person, you had that discipline, and is it important, or did you sort of put that into your so you first had to learn about how to stick with a behavior?
Oh, I used to be. I dropped out of school at a very young age. I struggled a little bit with authority. I went to 14 different schools, and
that you didn't tell us yesterday. That would be an interesting topic.
And I was a little bit lost, didn't know what to do. And then a friend of mine asked me, like, "Hey, you're good with computers. You want to start a business together?" And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." And then I found entrepreneurship, and this was like really the thing that was made for me. But since I never worked under somebody, or I never, went to university or school, I had to kind of figure everything out by myself. It is definitely acquired, and I not going to school doesn't mean that I didn't like learning. I love learning, but I like learning the stuff that I'm interested in. So I've consumed a lot of personal development books, a lot of management books, and so it's definitely acquired over time. The big aha moment was for me the book Traction by Gino Wickman. I highly recommend that everybody reads this book and implements what he has to say in your business. If you please write this down. That's the most important takeaway from this podcast to implement what is in this book. It's the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's basically a framework on how you can have a successful business with less headache. And all these things that were written in this book were things that I figured out over the years with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, especially at Max CDN, my last business, which grew very fast, very large. And if we would have had this book earlier, before we started Max CDN, it would have been probably 10 times the size. And I would not have gray hair in my beard. So yeah,
but I can tell you, I mean, also my history always shows me I always read the books a little bit after the fact instead of before the fact. It's sort of, I think it's in the journey. But is there something in that book that you would sort of share in your life that sort of, I get the book was an aha moment, but then, you know, there were a lot of things and then you learned some stuff. Is there any kind of story where, you know, it was a profoundly impactful 1 month where things really changed and made you sort of the person you are today, that would sort of give our audience sort of this happened to me, maybe, you know, maybe I will go and read that book, because that's always a good way of telling people why to read the book. And I know it's on the spot, so don't worry.
It's fine. No. The most profound thing that happened to me has not. I mean, reading this book and implementing this, I've implemented this in probably 15 plus businesses now, and all these businesses are really taken off afterwards. A friend of mine is a private equity guy. He has 13 or 14 businesses. The largest one has 900 employees, and the sweet spot of the businesses that he acquires are 60 million in annual revenue. And you would think that these businesses have their shit figured out, you know, but it's often not the case. So his strategy is to acquire these businesses and then implement this EOS system in it, and then they take off, you know, and it really works. But the most profound thing, when I think back, what really had the biggest impact in my life was an epiphany when my yoga teacher said, every decision in life you either make out of love or out of fear. And this was so profound to me that I almost fell out of downward facing dog, because it was something I always knew, but was not able to articulate it. And now knowing this really changed everything for me. I used to be very introverted, and, you know, being on a podcast would have never happened, or giving a talk yesterday in front of 100 people, I would prefer to shoot myself versus doing that. And also in sales, I really struggled with selling, because, like, being introverted, you know, I always felt bad, or I was even uncomfortable on conference calls, you know. It was really extreme. And I found that this is something that was holding me back massively. So I decided to do Toastmasters, where you learn how to public speak, and to so I went to 2 networking events a week and to 2 Toastmaster classes a week. It's also a habit, right? Kind of doing this on a regular basis. And then I kind of overcame my introvertness a little bit, but it still was not smooth sailing. But once I had this epiphany with acting out of love, not fear, everything changed for me. So, for example, in selling, if I want to sell this product here because I know this product is going to be, it will improve your business or your life or whatever, I know it's really good for you, then I can even be a pushy salesman. It's like, dude, you can buy this. It's going to be so good for you, right? And you feel where I'm coming from, right? That I'm acting out of love versus
I get it.
When I just think about, like, oh, I have to reach my numbers, I have to pay my mortgage, you know, then the other person also feels this.
It was, you know, for my audience, we had one of my first podcasts, believe it or not, was with Patty, who used to be HR for Netflix. She does a lot of sort of consultative work now, and she's got a lot of books. And actually the introduction, you know, she believes in teams and what are teams for. You have to decide what kind of a team you want, and then you can, but she said the beginning starts with one thing. And that is the guiding principle when you work with teams and with individuals is you can either, you know, you have to believe that everybody wants to do good. And in some sense, that means you have to love everybody. You have to really believe in those people. And you can't believe in people if you think of them sort of as, you know, just an entity. You have to really love them. And she says, if you can't have that principle, everything that I tell you doesn't work. It's the same thing that you said yesterday. And it was really powerful because sometimes you figure out, why am I doing this? Why am I sort of trying to help this guy? And it's because you really love them, because you really think there's something in there, and you want to bring the best out of them. And by bringing the best out of them, you can bring the best out of the team. And when you talked about love yesterday, we know that passionate salesmen are much better than the other ones. We know that with investors, sometimes you get them because you're just a passionate entrepreneur. How important that is. But the fact that you talked yesterday about how you implement that into different parts of your life, I think is what is most important. Everything you do, you have to see through the prism of love. And thank you. I think a lot of people yesterday and today hopefully will hear that. Talking about your a profound moment, and then the entrepreneurial operating system. How's your life today? What do you? We get it. You have your routines, but what makes you happy today? What's the stuff after all this? Things you've taken on board, and the fact that you roam the world, as I see, but not more than 1 week per month, if I
No,
understand.
even more. But then I bring my wife,
Yes,
my
yes,
daughter.
yes. We get that. Uh, how do you live your life to keep being so happy and performing at your level? What is your routine?
I mean, the main thing I think is that everything I'm doing is guided by my personal mission, which
Okay.
is being a change agent that is transforming the lives of individuals and organizations so they can reach their full potential.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing this within my businesses and a lot with managing happiness, where I do this team coachings to get people on their A game, because it just has a profound impact in their lives. And so I think if you love what you do, you never work a minute in your life. And so following my mission and vision statements, just makes everything fall into place.
And I always sort of ask when I do this is, um, tell me of a moment where you learned something but wasn't a great moment in your life, because I see a lot of people sort of, there's this moment and whatever, but how do you get there when you're sort of in a low spot in your life? Because people have it's a
Ups and
roller
downs.
coaster, and what did you do at that point so that you could see the brighter side? What did you
I
sort of?
always see the brighter side in things. It's if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
So
And
if you put a habit on there, you will always see the brighter side of life.
say it again.
If you put the right prism, if you have the right
Yes,
habit
yes.
of looking at the right way of, you will always have that, because the habit helps you make sure that you don't distract yourself.
Yes, and I can give you a bunch of examples. For example, my mother passed away 6 years ago, and she was an amazing person, and we really miss her. But if I look at it like, oh, poor me, now
Yeah.
I don't have her anymore, and she would be retired now, live in Bodrum with us, and she could teach my daughter so much. It would be so cool to
Yeah.
to spend time with her, travel the world with her. Then I have a crying eye. But if I turn it around and look at it like, hey, I'm so grateful that I had this amazing person in my life that taught me so much, that all the experiences that I had with her, other people don't have any parents, or don't don't get along with them. So yeah, I think you can always see the good in the bad. And always, like, a friend of mine gave a talk at Toastmasters, and he said we all have to go through fire,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to determine if we're made out of wood and we burn down through ashes, or if we're made out of precious metal and we get refined by this. So with every problem that comes, you can get better. I'm actually a big fan of having problems.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is if you have the same problems over and over.
Yes,
So
you're right.
at my businesses, we have an error log, and everybody adds the fuck ups, the customer complaints, whatever we do that's wrong is added to this log. And then in the management meetings, we discuss these errors to figure out which process do we have to improve so these things will never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
This way, we always get better and better and better and better and better. And nobody can get in trouble for fucking up.
But if you do it more times,
the only thing where you get really in trouble if you don't add it to the error log. So
yes.
I'm always grateful for new problems.
And I will share with our audience. Again, thank you. I think it's not only in my name, but in the name of Seed, who were kind enough to sort of helped get you here and have the conference yesterday. But there was one thing at your first presentation and yesterday where you talk about being, grateful, and there's the story of your little stone that you bring up, and that somehow connected us as well with a little story. But the truth of that story is that being grateful at good things that are happening in your life allow you to sort of focus at the right things and put you into perspective. And I think that was really a powerful message yesterday. And at least, for a few people I talked with, it's true. If there's something that just reminds you to think about the wife you have at home, or the husband and the family, and even if not everything's perfect, you can see the bright side of light. And that was something that I must say profoundly touched me from your presentation. Because we have new things, I don't do this normally. Do you have a question for me?
Mm, no, not really. But I think it makes sense to share this gratitude rock story with the audience, because I think it's something that everybody should do. Especially, I assume the audience is mainly entrepreneurs,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And we all go through the entrepreneurial roller coaster, like yay, fuck, and it can be tough on you. But actually, let me tell you a story where I went through the toughest time in my life, where my business was going great. This was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, um, and which meant I was very busy. And then our daughter was born, which was amazing. But as you know, with kids, right, it really screws you over in terms of you don't sleep, you have so much added responsibility, and it's not easy to balance work and having a newborn. Then my wife had very severe abdominal pains after giving birth. She was on like crazy amount of painkillers and nothing helped. She couldn't sleep. So it was like was crazy for her. And she had a surgery, and this didn't fix it. Then 2 weeks after my daughter was born, my mother died. Then my wife had another surgery, and this then finally fixed it. And then a week later, my grandma died. So it was like this crazy whirlwind of shit that was going on in my life. And an employee of mine came to me and said, like, hey man, how can you run around with a smiling face in the office and be productive while so much crazy stuff's going on in your life? And I said, I have no idea. He said, please think about it. I'd like to know. And I thought about it, and it's mainly two things. Number one is that I'm very good at accepting things as they are. And there's the serenity prayer, which is give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the power to change things I can change, and the wisdom to know which one's which.
Yes.
I think this is really powerful, because then, we've been at Max and we've been hacked before. We had a business partner who embezzled money. And so if you just accept these things, then you can act. Otherwise, you just react. And you can actually make a chess move once you accept and get yourself into a better position. And the second thing is gratitude. So, sounds super hippie. Usually a few years ago, this would never been on an entrepreneur podcast.
You're totally right.
So I have this habit, this exercise, where every morning I take a rock and I go through the things. I pick it up with my phone, my wallet, etc., and I go through the things I'm grateful for. My healthy body, my wife, my daughter, businesses, friends, being here in Ljubljana. Grateful that it's not so cold, and lots of things. And this helps me to see the beauty in my life, and it makes it much easier to go through these rough patches. Because if you just singly focus on the problem that you currently have at hand, you think like, oh my god, the world sucks, and it's like, how will I get through this? But if you're in a state of gratitude, you will see that this problem is just a pick of dust in the grand scheme of things. And 6 months from now, you don't even remember this problem, And so it's a really powerful thing. And throughout the day, I have the stone in my pocket, and sometimes I feel the stone. This brings me back to, sometimes I get stressed, and then this brings me back to, hey, actually, you know what? Everything's good. And this problem, you're also going to rock through it, whatever. And at the end of the day, I take out the rock and I go through what went great this day, because often you have a productive morning, and at I don't know, at 3 p.m. you have an unpleasant conversation with your wife, your business partner, your investor, whatever, right? And you think like everything sucks, but it does not, because you still got got a lot done before.
Yes.
And I've been doing this for many years, I think almost 20 years now. and this has built up my gratitude muscle quite a bit. And so this is what allows me to go through these rough patches, that we all have as entrepreneurs.
It's a lovely story, and I can't say how I think again grateful not only in my name but everybody that listened to you yesterday, and again Seed, because they brought you.
Yes, thank you, Seed. You're awesome.
Yes,
love you guys. I love the community that you've built here. It's really cool.
So we always finish off with we understand traction. That's one book, everybody. But is there one book you read in the last year that you would also or something you sort of experienced in terms of learnings that people should go off and take a book, a magazine, a online, whatever, that profoundly sort of did a step up in your thinking?
I always like to ask people what, especially when I hire them, what are the 3 books that had the biggest impact in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and what's the last book you've read?
Mm-hmm.
I do this for 2 reasons. A, I want new good book tips, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other reason is I want to see if people are in the growth mindset.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
they always, if they're, just like, oh no, just watch TV. Well, then you're not right for me. So the top 3 books that had the biggest impact in my life is The 4 Agreements, which is by, his last name is Ruiz. It's a book on the agreements that you make with yourself, and it's about mindset. It's really crazy impactful. I don't want to get too deep into it. Trust me, read the book. It's only on Audible. It's 2.5 hours read, so it's like a very quick listen. I listen to it like multiple times a year. It's always a good refresher. And then Napoleon Hill. You familiar with Napoleon Hill?
That one not.
It's he lived in the 1920s and worked with the most successful people of this time, with Dale Carnegie, Henry Ford, Rockefeller, etc. And he figured out, what are these people doing differently versus people who are not successful? What kind of mindset do they have? And he really analyzed this through his entire life.
Really?
And the most well-known book is called Think and Grow Rich. But I think it's just a long sales letter to get you to read The Laws of Success by him.
The Laws of Success.
And yeah, and then he wrote another book which he didn't dare to publish because he thought he would get killed, which is called Outwitting the Devil. In this book, he has a conversation with the devil, and he interviews the devil, asking the devil, what does the devil do to make us not reach our goals? And what kind of tools does the devil have? And
I'm gonna read this one. I read a lot of books, but I haven't read that one, and we'll see. Okay.
And the biggest tool that the devil has is fear,
yes,
to make us not reach our goals.
Yes, Jerry Colonna was my big life coach, and I know that in my life there was never a moment, and he talked about fear, and how you talk the same things and from different perspectives, but his really strong story is you have to embrace, like you have to accept fear. It's not like something that's bad, but you just have to accept it, because then you can do something about it. If it overpowers you, you're lost. And it's like with acceptance, everything starts with acceptance. And the biggest I would call big thing about me was after sort of being with him about 2-3 years, and going through probably the most rough time in my life. That was about 10 years ago. We met 3 years later, and he sort of said, Christian, the biggest thing about you is I would have never imagined how sort of you successfully sort of embraced fear and took it into your advantage. It was the biggest sort of wow moment in my life when somebody sort of told me that. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect and I have all that, but the fact that he saw that meant really a lot to me. A guy that coaches a lot of CEOs and does a lot of great stuff, and now I meet you. It seems that the life brings together people that have a very
everything happens for a reason.
Yes, I tell you it is, and I love the embracing. So David, if our listeners, viewers would like to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you want to check out Managing Happiness, we start doing group coachings. It's managinghappiness.com/mastermind. You can sign up for the mastermind where it's 10 entrepreneurs getting together, and you come together once a week for 10 weeks, and we teach you how to come up with your mission statement, your personal mission statement, vision statement, your core values, your 90-day plan, and the habits that you want to integrate in your life. And the group hold each other accountable that you actually do your habits and that you work on the important stuff in your life, like towards the goals of your 9-day plan. It's really, really impactful.
David, thank you very much. Again, to our viewers, thank you very much. You've been listening to Bishan and David talk about happiness. It's been, I will be very grateful at the end of the day for today. If nothing else happens, I will have had this great opportunity to have a very nice talk in a great surrounding. So, David, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.